I'm running through a different streaming software and got a microphone here for Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to make sure all that is going. I'm having some frame rate drops. Let me know if that's a problem. Instagram, I'm here with you live as well. And I'm going to maybe try to adjust that a little bit. I did not sign up in ministry to be a YouTuber by any means, so that is not why I'm here. But we are here for... There we go. Okay. So that's why. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Facebook Live. I'm going to share this. Give everybody a second to hop on. And we don't want any... We don't want any kind of bleed through or anything, do we? So, hey, welcome. Welcome here on Instagram. This is, sorry, it's kind of dark. I'll tell you the truth. Hold on. This is my ring light. And it got eaten by our robot vacuum. So, I still have yet to fix that. So, go figure. So, that's broken. So I'm a little dark here right now, but I hope you'll bear with me. I am glad to hop on here. The boys are upstairs. What's up, buddy? If I'm bothering you, let me know. I'm gonna... Nope, what do I want to do? Oh, apparently Facebook has changed the interface. Go figure. Always. I'm going to share that. Anyways, so this is the weekly double dip. Today, Instagram, welcome to Weekly Double Dip. We talked about Jesus as the bread of life this past Sunday, and I wanted to dive a little more into that, just to talk about kind of the implications of that and just some other thoughts that are on my mind. So, I'm going to give you a second to hop in. Let me know, Facebook, how the sound is. You guys okay? I
need my different water bottle.
Why do you need your different water bottle?
It's leaking all over my picture.
Okay. So Judah's water bottle is leaking. And yeah, I've noticed that. Okay. Give me 1 second and we'll jump into it. Sorry, gang. This is parenthood right here. Am I right? OBS, how we doing? Looking good? Audio sounds good? All right, I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. Okay, buddy. Sorry about that. The one from your book bag? Or what'd you do with it?
It's the packaging.
Where is it? Do you know where it is?
Maybe?
Living room. There you go. What do you say? You're welcome. And we're back. Also, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Instagram for you all. I don't want that to fall. All right. And we're back. So we're talking about the bread of life and the weekly double dip. And the idea behind this is that we're hanging out and you're just sharing any questions, any thoughts, insights that you might have from this past weekend or from the scriptures, anything that's on your heart, anything that's on your mind. And I'm going to share a little bit of some of the extra stuff that that was on my mind. What's up, Durissa? Welcome to the party. Anybody on Instagram, let me know for sure. So what I thought I would do is highlight some scriptures from this weekend that stood out to me and answer any questions you might have. So I preached on John chapter 6. John chapter 6. We're in this series, I Am, and basically the argument, the claim, is that Jesus wasn't just claiming to be another good teacher or another good person. Jesus is God. It's kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal. That's why when you hear people talk about, oh, he was just another guy, maybe he didn't even exist, and, you know, yes, Noel on Facebook, it is all your fault. Um, anyways, but he wasn't just a good teacher, right? He wasn't just a good guy. He's not just like any other Messiah figure. There's the theory out there, especially that like Jesus didn't actually make these claims. The early church just kind of blew it out of proportion. But the truth is, Jesus from the beginning claimed to be God, and if that's the case, like that says a lot, doesn't it? That's a big deal. And so we're looking at what he said about himself, that he said, "I am the bread of life." And I want to pose this to everybody who's watching, anybody who watches this later on. I want to pose the idea of the signs that we ask God to give us. So Jesus says in chapter 6, he says to them, "I tell you the truth," verse 26, "you are looking for me not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. On him, the God the Father has placed his seal of approval." And so it's this idea of signs, and they come back and they say, all right, well, if you want us to believe in you, what miraculous sign are you going to do for us so that we might believe you? And I just want to bring that up to us tonight. Like, what are the signs that you've asked for? And why is it that we have such a hard time with this idea of signs and looking and seeing God? I think so much of how we live our lives is dependent on the filters that we use, the way we look at the world, the way we understand the world, the way we understand life, what our experience is. And I think it's so important for us. I'm going to raise this up a little bit here. It's so important for us to be able to identify our experiences ahead of time, right? Because I believe that God is always working. I believe that God is always at work. I believe that he's constantly showing things and he's constantly moving and working. And yet I'll be the first to tell you that there have been countless times in my life when I have asked God all the time, God, where are you working? What are you doing? I need a sign. Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? I need you to show me something. And I'm reminded that like he already did show something. He already did work in my life. That, even at the very least, the Bible tells us that God demonstrates his love for us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So I don't know, just want to get your thoughts a little bit on why is it that we struggle with seeing how God's working in our lives? Why is it that we are always looking for a new sign from God? Why isn't what he did enough for us? So that's one thing I want to think about, because I'm always trying to look for something that God's doing, and often I'll miss it. And the other idea that stood out to me was the idea of along the lines of signs. I'm drawing a complete blank. Sorry about that. Edit that out post-production. What was the other idea? I had it written down. It's in my notes too, for sure. Like I have all kinds of notes from last week's sermon and all the processing that I do ahead of time as I'm preparing and stuff. So signs. So, okay, so the idea that Jesus is the sign. There it is. I'm sorry, gang. That Jesus is the sign. So, like, I just want to remind us that Jesus says, so I did these things. I did these signs for you. I gave you the bread from heaven. I gave you, I fed 5,000 people. And yet now you're asking for more signs. And I just want to tell us that, listen, Jesus is the sign for us. Like, we know God because we see Jesus. That's again, that's the distinction that we have as Christians, that we're not waiting for a sign. We don't need to wait on God's approval. We already have it. What's going on, David, on Instagram? Welcome to the party. I'm just talking about Jesus is the bread from heaven and the signs that he gives us. So Jesus is the sign. Jesus is the sign that God gives us. Jesus does signs because he is a sign. Jesus does wonders because he is wonderful. And I think so often we want these big miraculous things to show up, and over again in the scriptures and in the New Testament especially, like, Jesus is the sign, that he is the demonstration of God's love for us, that he is the glory of God revealed. And so if you want to know God, you get to know Jesus. If you want a sign from God, you look at the cross. So I just want to point us in that direction, that ultimately God is at work in Jesus. Jesus is he's the whole thing. Like, he's what we have. So on Facebook, Darissa asks if I've ever read the book Draw the Circle. That was I believe, Mark Batterson. That's not one that I've read yet. Honestly, I'm a terrible reader. I'll just confess to you all. I mean, I love reading, but I don't do a whole ton of it. But I've heard so many good things about Draw the Circle, and it's changed a lot of lives. But the prayer fleece, like laying out, yeah. So that's Gideon, right, in the book of Judges, where he gets called by God to save the nation, to fight against the Philistines, and he's like, I'm just this small little guy from this tiny little clan. Why are you calling me? And so he lays out a fleece. He asks God for a sign. He lays out a fleece and says, all right, God, like, make it dewy around the fleece, but keep the fleece dry, or make it dry, but then keep the fleece dewy, wet, and then I'll know that you're with me. And I don't really understand the significance of all of that, other to say, like, I need a sign. And here's the thing, God does it, though. Like, that's the goodness of God, that God is faithful and actually does what Gideon asked for. So I think it's okay to ask for signs. I think it's okay to say, God, I need you to show me that I'm on the right track, that you're working. But the question is, for me, are we doubting the goodness of God when we're asking for signs? So there's a difference between asking for a sign because we just want some confirmation, we just need some confidence, and but between that and, God, I don't believe you. I doubt this. So Zechariah in the temple before Jesus is born, John the Baptist's dad gets silenced. Like, he laughs and doubts the angel, and he's like, how can this be, right? How is this going to happen? I'm an old man. And out of that, he gets muted. Now, I think the muting is a sign, but at the same time, there's this idea that he doubted, and so he was silenced for 9 months. So Noel says, this post, to this point, I wonder sometimes, is everything ordained, or do we put too much stock into certain things? It's our own interpretation of the sign. I got to keep reading. So, yeah. So that's good. Like, the joke where the guy asks God, why did you let me drown? He's like, I sent you a boat, a raft, a helicopter, and, show me a sign, God. Like, deliver me. And God keeps sending. And I think that's true, Noel. I think that's a great point. So often we want some big, like, skywriting sign, and we want the 5,000 people to be fed, with bread and fish. But the truth is that God works in the ordinary, mundane situations of our lives. God will send things in our direction that doesn't look elaborate, doesn't look crazy. It's just simple. And he's certainly done that in my life. Like, I can tell you, he's shown up and he's done little things that at the time didn't make sense, or I didn't pick up on how massive it was at the time. But looking back in hindsight, I can tell you, like, okay, all right, that's how God was working. I see that now. Things that at the time I thought I understood, only in hindsight did I get. So I think that's helpful. Like, hindsight is very, very important for us, and we always need to be like writing down, take notes, journal, um, whatever word you want to use for it, you know, neighbors doing stuff outside. Sorry, whatever word you want to use for it, just write stuff down so you can keep track of how God is working. So I'd be interested to hear any other thoughts about this idea of signs. I feel like Facebook, I'm watching my face skip a whole lot. So let me know. Again, this is new, so let me know how the audio is. I'm not really sold on this location. The light is behind me. I'm not trying to make this a big ordeal. As I said, I'm not on this to be like some big YouTube content creator, but it is what it is. I can did I drop at some point? Let me enter the studio real quick. Anyway. Okay, so that's not what we want. Did I stop Facebook? Audio is great. Awesome. Very cool. I'm glad to see that. Speaking into this nice little microphone here. I would like to be able to follow the chat all together in one place, but it's all good. So I enjoy this. I like this. Just kind of hanging out, the double dip. What is it that God spoke? I'm actually going to look back in my notes from last week on Microsoft Word too, because there's some stuff. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. All right. Microsoft Word, open up. Anyway, the other thing I want to remind us too is the idea of, so I don't know about you, but the most important thing for me in this message and in this week and journey in Lent is, like, what are the things that I go to find nourishment and purpose and identity in that ultimately are just going to leave me feeling empty, and malnourished. And I think that so often, especially as Christians, like, my tendency is to say, all right, I'm saved, I came to know Jesus and I started following him and I'm good. So, like, I come to church on Sunday and I get fed, and, or if you're me, like, I'm the pastor, so I do my thing on Sunday and I'm good. But, like, that's why I'm trying to go deeper this year in 2021 to understand how my relationship with God is an ongoing, evolving, growing journey. And I still, even though I know better, I will still go back to those things that aren't good for me, and I will say, maybe this time lashing out will be okay. Maybe this time those impure thoughts will be okay. Maybe this time I'm not going to feel worse about myself after the fact. Like, maybe this time I won't regret what I said to that person, or the thoughts that, because you think, like, if I judge and condemn someone in my head, then I feel better about myself after the fact, but oftentimes then we just feel worse. So, man, I'm just really wrestling with that in this season. What is it that what is it that I'm trying to rely on to find my fulfillment and my purpose that is not of Jesus, that just is not, what he has for me, and ultimately leaves me wanting more. So that's a struggle that I have. Yeah, no, well, we can keep coming back to signs and stuff. I'm not going to stay on much longer, but I do like this. So, for some reason, the stream monitor on the streaming website says 2 minutes, but I know I've been going for longer than 2 minutes. Anyways, but yeah, knowing the scriptures, Noel, you're right. Friends interpreting things as a sign to do something, but really it's a bad decision. Yeah, like, this is where spirituality is really dangerous, because what we do is, if we think that, like, the universe is sending us signs, or, whatever we believe, just Like, it's what ends up happening is we end up subconsciously confirming what we really want. And that's why it's about um yeah, soulmates. Like, if we're not careful, if we don't root our spirituality in the person of Jesus, it becomes kind of like ethereal and amorphous, and like it's not rooted on anything, you know? So, you hear things, and I'm not trying to diss on anybody's beliefs by any means, but I do want to respond to it because we live in a very spiritual age, like even though culture is becoming very secular, in other words, like religion is kind of being pulled away from the center of dialogue, which I don't think is necessarily a terrible thing for Christians. I think it's helpful for us to be decentered sometimes. That's a whole nother conversation. But we live in a very spiritual society. Like, as Americans, we just have this like underlying Christian morality and this understanding of things that's slowly starting to drift a little bit on, I think, all ends of the political and sociological spectrum. Like, I don't think that's a left or right thing. I think it's just across the board that the right thinks they have it, the left thinks they have it. This is not a political statement. What I'm trying to say is, as we just become more spiritual and the universe is speaking to me, and like, you speak your own truth into existence, think it, name it, claim it, all stuff that actually works its way into Christianity, it's hard for that to actually have any foundation. Like, I think that's one of the things about following Jesus that for me is so profound, that we get to say that my purpose is not rooted in my good thoughts. My purpose and my identity is not rooted in cultural, trends and stuff. And it's not me just like wishing things into existence. That there is a person out there named Jesus, and he is God, and he has a will and plan for my life, and he saved me from myself, because we're so good now. We're so good, can I preach for a minute, at like overemphasizing the good things in us and de-emphasizing our faults. Like, we love to be woke right now, and woke's good. Like, I think social issues that we need to be aware of, but everybody's calling everybody else out, and cancel culture and all these things, and we fail to look in the mirror and see that in our own way we all have issues. And so if you can't like, so what I'm saying, all this is a roundabout way, Noel, to say that what ends up happening in your own spirituality is that you will look for signs, and you'll look for clues and spiritual moments under every rock. And I want to say, and I think the scriptures of the New Testament want to say, that the truth of spirituality is rooted in Jesus Christ, that true spirituality is connected to the Holy Spirit. So it's not just a concept of spirit, but is actually a person, is a being that wants to interact with you and lead you and guide you. And then when you can go back to this book, and you can go back to 2,000 years of teaching and history, you can say, no, God would not say that. Like, God would not lead me to leave my spouse just because I disagreed with them, or, whatever. Like, I mean, even big issues, unfaithfulness, like, there are places where we are called to reconcile, and we are called to forgive and work through things. And so we need to grapple with that. And what's going to happen is immediately someone's going to say, what do you mean? You can't tell me that. That's our cultural impulse pushing up against an outside authority, because authority is located here in our day and age. And so, yeah, that's exactly right. I think that is a big deal. We will look for whatever sign we want without realizing that, like, Jesus already came and already is the sign for all of us. So that's what we need to hold on to. Anyway, so like I said, a lot of thoughts. This weekly double dip is kind of just off the dome. Like, what was it from last week that really spoke to me? What were some pieces that I left unspoken or kind of on the chopping block for the sermon? I'll see if there's any other that stand out here that hopefully will encourage you. Oh yeah. Let me end with this one too. So Jesus has this big address at the end of this interaction, and what he says is, if anyone wants to receive my flesh, they must eat my Yeah, here it is, 54. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. And I just wanted to remind us that the message of Christianity, and the reason why I think it's so powerful and life-changing and world-changing and countercultural, is that ultimately we are invited to identify with the death of Jesus and to die with him. Right now, man, in modern Christianity, we want to, like, I don't want to harp on anybody because I know I have my issues as a preacher and I know I will, but man, we want to dumb down the idea of the cross. Like, it is just the means through which we get to the resurrection. And so, yeah, we have to go through Friday to get to Sunday, but ultimately, like, Sunday's here and resurrection power, and so we overemphasize the victory that we have in Jesus right now. So if you look back in, say the Reformation time period, so when Martin Luther was around and, hung up the 95 Theses or published it and all of that, and the Protestant church was born, one of Luther's biggest issues was with what he called theologians of glory, where they wanted to claim the resurrection now in ways that he said was not appropriate. So, like, we still have to suffer, we still have to die to ourselves, that we are identified with the man on the cross. Yes, he's the one who died for us, but as Paul says, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. He says, I have been crucified with Christ. Like, that is my present reality. And so the life of the Christian is constantly being crucified over and over again, that it is the process of growth in us where we actually are dying to ourselves. And so Jesus says, listen, if you want to be a part of me, you need to follow me to the cross. And you need to take the death that I took for you, and you need to live that every day. And no, you don't earn your salvation. You don't die for your own sins. All of that is a gift from God. But we cannot skip. Like, the resurrection, the hope of the resurrection is a future hope. It is the hope that we have when Christ returns. In the meantime, are there going to be places where we experience victory? Absolutely. Are we going to see resurrection in this life in some ways? Yes, man, I'm going to preach that on Easter. Believe me. But we have to live a life on the cross. And we don't like to talk about that in the church now because it doesn't sell as good, to be honest with you. We all want to talk about my victory and all that. And I sing those songs and I preach those sermons, but I also want to put that in the context of the true Christian life is lived as we die every day. And so that's what he says. Like, unless you eat my blood, or you eat my flesh and you drink my blood, like, you don't have any part in me. And so we have to identify Jesus died on a cross. God came in the flesh and died on a cross. And so then for us, we get to be a part of that story and join him in that death. So I want to leave you with that, and let me know again how this worked out, if this was all right. I think I'm not like hooked directly into the internet, so the computer might be struggling to stream a little bit, but I like this setup. If I could move it, make it mobile, put it in another room, I would love to do that. Hang out with Melody a little bit or something. But Instagram, thank you for watching. Facebook, thanks for checking things out. YouTube as well. And I want to try to find a way to centralize the chat too, so if I can watch and follow along on YouTube, maybe I'll even do that right now. See if anybody was on there. It's a learning process. Listen, I believe very much in the work of the physical local church, and we are working to try to, hold services in person and stuff here soon. Updates coming hopefully very, very soon on that. But at the same time, like, online isn't going away, and so I want to keep doing this kind of stuff. So let me know your thoughts, any other questions. I think what I would love for you to do is, if you tune in and join us on Sunday, if you worship with us, man, I'm fired up about this coming week's sermon. Like, oh my goodness. I'm so fired up about what I'm what I'm studying in the scriptures and stuff about Jesus as the light of the world. So if you have any questions, watch, tune in, check it out later. Have questions, send them in to me. I would love to address them about, like, I didn't get that. I wasn't sure about how you said that. What's a Greek word there? What's a translation difference? Anything, like anything's on the table, or anything as simple as like, why do you honestly think pasta is the best food on the planet? Because I do. It's just true. Anyways, all that's to say, I love you, grateful for you. I'm going to sign off now. And yeah, let me see anything else. If you want, join our Facebook Alive Online group. And also make sure you're following along here on Instagram. Our stories, we're doing our 40 days of deeper. So every day we're putting out a prayer prompt, a scripture for you to meditate on, to pray over, whether it's by yourself or whether it's with a friend or a spouse. Not a spouse, your spouse, one spouse. So follow along with that. Also, we have an email list where we're sending that out as well at the beginning of, basically on Wednesdays, because Lent starts on a Wednesday. And hopefully you can grow in your faith, follow Jesus, love him more, and, change the world. So we love you, and I'm going to go ahead and log on off of OBS. This was slick. I like it. All right, guys. We'll catch you next time.